And then I didn't go back to New York until 96. And I used to sleep on Patrice O'Neil's couch back then.
Live from the Willie Nelson and Friends Museum Showcase in Nashville, Tennessee. It's Music is Funny. Musicians talking to comedians about music and comedy. With your hosts, Raelyn Nelson and Jonathan Bright.
Smoking, I'm so high, I keep toking, I'm drunk, but I'm still drinking too.
Welcome back to Music is Funny. I'm Raelyn Nelson.
And I'm Jonathan Bright from the Raelyn Nelson Band, and we're back with another fabulous, unnecessary and ridiculous intro.
But you said fabulous.
Although, I will say that this is one of my favorite episodes because while you give me a lot of crap for telling people how old I am, we had a guest that actually asked me how old I was. Why? To make a reference point, which is the whole reason why I tell people how old I am. Anyway, take it away, Raelyn. Ladies and gentlemen, Russell Peters.
Have you ever heard of the term panty crickets? Apparently it's a Southern STD term. If you if you say he's got panty crickets, it means he's going to give you something.
Perhaps.
Something. Well, that's the thing. Like, nobody has hair down there anymore, so no. But something. He's not coming at me.
Not surprised. We'll take that as a sign if that's the case.
Yeah, like, it's okay if he doesn't want to.
What are you guys doing over here?
I'm to start a podcast.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
What, panty crickets?
Huh? Clearly she's got the headphones on while she's trying to talk to me. Yeah, so you're all in.
Hi, guys.
Yeah, we do.
Y'all ever heard of the term panty crickets?
Like crotch crickets, I would assume?
Yeah.
I guess that would probably be the same thing, yeah. Just means STDs, I guess, or...
Crabs, particularly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
It's a much nicer way of saying it, but I feel like I got crabs, like, that sucks, but like, kind of funny if you say crotch cricket.
Yeah, it's a little cuter, more quaint.
Yeah, people will laugh instead of be grossed out.
They might just think you're joking. You're like, I told you.
Yeah.
You were joking. Like, what made you think I was joking?
Oh, he's here. Hi.
Kids,
What's going on, man?
what's happening?
I'm Raelyn, and this is my co-host and music partner, guitar player, JB.
Nice to
Hey,
meet you.
JB and Raelyn.
And we got bored over the pandemic, and because we ride around in a van together, usually before the pandemic, we don't agree on any music to listen to, even though we like the music we make as a band. We don't agree
What's
on
the music
any.
you make as a band?
It's a mixture. So like Rolling Stone Country, name drop, said that it was like Loretta Lynn fronting Cheap Trick.
Oh, yeah.
A little different.
She's country. I'm an old punk rock dude, so it's
Yeah.
sort of the combo of that stuff, writing songs together like that.
So
Well, country's kind of genetic for her.
Yeah, she's got it. Yeah, that's a good point. But
You want, do you know what? Not crazy, but this geeked me out. On my flight to Miami on Monday, I hadn't slept because I didn't sleep the night before because the flight was crazy early. So I get on the flight. I'm sitting in first class, which is nice. And this short, chubby guy gets on the plane, sits beside me on the right. And he's got a sweatshirt on with a drummer standing like this, right? Drummer has black hair and a beard, but he looked really clean cut. So I was like, I can't tell who that. And, I'm pretty well versed in a lot of music. So I'm looking at the sweatshirt. I'm like, it's really bugging me. Who the fuck is that? Who is that? Who is that? And then finally I succumbed to my curiosity. And I said, hey, man, who's that on your sweatshirt? And he goes, oh, that's my dad. That's John Bonham. I go, what the fuck?
Jason.
I go, Jason? He goes, yeah. I go, wow.
That's a trip.
That was a trip. Now we're basically best friends and we're starting a band. So,
Well, you got a good drummer to start with, that's for sure.
So do you play any instruments?
No, not even a little bit. But
You don't have to anymore.
no, don't play instruments. Can't sing worth a lick.
Do you write
But
songs?
I guess auto-tune could save me.
Yeah, if you can make syllables, we can tune that baby up.
Even without a syllable nowadays.
Yeah,
You don't
that's
even
a
need
good
that.
point. Yeah.
Do you write songs?
No,
No?
not even close. I DJ. I've been DJing since 1985.
Oh, wow.
Oh, well, that's really cool.
So we usually start off by
Oh, yeah.
asking, like, when you were a kid, what's the first music or the first song or whatever you remember liking as a child?
the first album I ever bought was Kiss Love Gun in 1977.
There you go.
I was 6.5 years old, and I was at the record store and I saw it. I think I had seen a commercial for Rock and Roll Over right before that. And so I recognized, I recognized the faces, and I was like, whatever that is, it looks really cool. My dad, my parents were immigrants, so they didn't know what it was. He thought it was like some sort of clown record or something. I said, Dad, can I get that? And he goes, yeah, okay, fine. And then I got it. And I remember I Stole Your Love was the first song on that album when you put it on the platter. And then back in, it was 77. So you had to put the record on the thing, and then I'd sit on the floor with the headphones on. You'd hit start, and then, the ching, 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 ching. And then the way that I Stole Your Love started was so sudden that I would, every single time it would start, bang, bang, I would jump every single time. And I remember going, wow, this is the best shit in the world, right?
Yeah, man, no count off, just right into it.
Oh yeah, there was no count off. There was no 1, 2, 3, like bang, 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 bang. Damn, every single time.
That's hysterical. So, and you grew up in Canada, is that right?
Yeah, in Toronto.
Yeah. So well, Kiss was worldwide. Then they got me too when I was about 9 years old. Same thing. I heard Rock and Roll All Night, and I think I bought the first record I got was their first record because it had that, or their third record because it had that song on it, and then started, at that point and at that age, then the magazines come out and the album covers. You look at Kiss Alive too, with all the fire and all that shit.
And the blood on the cover.
Reeled me right in.
And what kind of music did your mom and dad listen to? What was going on in the family? What was around?
So my parents were there was a 16 year age difference between the two of them. But because my dad was 1925, my mom was 1941. In that time, if you listen to music, everybody listened to the same music because that's kind of what it was.
Right.
So there was a lot of big band played in my house, a lot of Glenn Miller, a lot of Tommy Dorsey, and then a lot of rock and roll, like Bill Haley and that kind of stuff. The Platters, the Ink Spots, the Mills Brothers, Frankie Lane, Patty. What's her name again? Not Patty. You know what I'm talking about. Crazy.
Patsy
Cline.
Patsy Cline. Jim Reeves, all that kind of stuff was played in the house.
Wow. So you mentioned your parents were immigrants. How old were they when they moved? Did they move straight to Canada? Mm-hmm. Were you born in Canada?
I was born in Canada.
Okay. So
my parents moved to Canada. My parents moved from India to Canada in 1965.
So
they were all listening to all this stuff in India.
Yeah, that was my next question. So that was sort of worldwide, the big band era, I guess, made its way around.
Yeah, and because my family's Anglo-Indian, they're mixed with British.
Oh, okay.
They their musical tastes were always skewed to that side. So Engelbert Humperdinck is one of our people. He's an Anglo-Indian as well.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and Cliff Richard as well.
Wow, well done.
Those are my peeps. Those are our peeps. And it's funny enough, growing up, Engelbert Humperdinck in an Anglo-Indian house is like, he's like God to us. You know what I mean? So
I didn't even know.
Last year over COVID, I don't know how this came about, but I ended up becoming like pen pals with the guy, and we started emailing each other, and he was telling me how much he loved my stuff. I'm like, what? I was like, what? I grew up like you were like everything. Like if I went to a family party, the last song was always an Engelbert song.
Yeah, and it's funny about you too. I didn't find out till, sort of recently, how fucking gigantic you are internationally. Like one of the biggest comics in the world when you factor in all of that stuff. So how did you, I don't know, I guess we'll back way up to get there. It's kind of mind blowing to me when I got into it and see how far your reach is.
Wait a minute. What's the first comedian you remember loving?
Oh, well, I remember the first comedy album I bought was in 1979. It was the Big Bamboo album by Cheech and Chong.
Oh.
And it came with a giant rolling paper.
Oh, fun.
And because I'm 9 years old, I don't know anything about that world. I was like, this is stupid. And I threw it out. The neighbors next door were like, no.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So did that make you want to go into comedy, Cheech and Chong?
No, it made me aware of comedy, made me love comedy. And I remember a kid brought in the 45 of Sister Mary Elephant to school.
Oh yeah.
And I remember we were playing in a class, and I remember crying, laughing so hard I couldn't breathe. And then I asked the kid, I go, please, can I borrow this record? I'm going to take it home. And I took the record home, and I listened to it over and over and over. And then I brought it back to him the next day. But think about that. Like, you put a sketch on a single record. Like, you put a 45 out of a sketch that was like 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes long. And it was that solidly funny that you could just listen to that and laugh your ass off. That to me is like a testament of how genius they were.
Until you mentioned that, I totally forgot about these comedy singles that came out. I know my grandfather had the What It Was Football. Andy Griffith he's got a bit on, some country guy walking up on a football game that has no idea what's going on, and a whole bit, but it was hilarious. But until just now, comedy singles way back.
Oh yeah, it was a thing, and I can't even imagine today me trying to release a joke on 45. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That would be so
It's
weird.
kind of like an Instagram post. Kind of.
Yeah, but much more clever.
Oh yeah.
And what's just crazy,
but with talent.
Right. But our profession, music, is kind of going back to singles now. It's funny, the long.
Oh yeah.
It's like now nobody really cares about people do, but the mainstream. But I guess you can't really, the comedy hour is still the standard.
Yes.
So I wonder why that is. Who decided on an hour? That's the length of an album, maybe.
It's because albums got replaced with specials.
Right.
Right.
Whereas albums came out before specials.
Right.
It preceded specials, and then you would get an album out, and then maybe you would get a special somewhere else, somewhere down the road. But I had lunch with Bob Newhart about 2 months ago, a month and a half ago, and he's 92 or 93 years old now.
He's still hilarious too. I heard him on Conan's podcast, and oh my God, sharp as a tack. I was crying. Sharp.
And he was just, he's just, he was like, he was the first guy to win a Grammy for a comedy album.
Whoa.
In the 60s. That's crazy.
Crazy.
And he has the best stories. They're so dope, his stories.
Oh, I can imagine. He's been doing it for 90 something. So what, 60, 70 years?
He's been in TV for 61 years.
Good Lord.
Holy shit.
And to still be as funny as he is, it's mind-boggling.
Sharp. And he was just telling me that he has to walk with a cane now. And he was just telling me that the saddest part about this is that he can't do stand-up. I go, why can't you do stand-up? It doesn't affect your brain. He's like, I don't feel comfortable sitting. Like, well, get up, walk around, do what you got to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Get the needle. He said there's an injection he can get that can help him alleviate this back pain he has. I'm like, do it, and then get on the road, because you'll feel like you again. It'll add years back onto your life.
Yeah.
It's like her grandpa. I think that's why he's lived so long, because he's never stopped touring.
Except for when COVID.
Oh, that's the thing. How old is he now? How old is Willie?
He's 88.
Wow.
And my Aunt Bobby, who plays piano for him, his sister, is 91.
Wow. And they're all still doing it.
Still doing it. They just got back on the road again. In August.
That's what you said there.
Yeah.
Every time it's like such hack that you have to say something about it.
It's not even hack. It's just like, oh yeah. Because when you meet the people that are like the founding fathers of things that we do and say, and you say it in front of them, you feel like, oh, I didn't mean to say that, but you're like, but that's because of you. We say that.
Yeah.
All right. So Cheech and Chong, how do you decide to go into, or what's your first move into comedy? Like, how do you do that out of, immigrant family from Canada? That had to be weird too, just growing up in Canada.
Well, so it was Cheech and Chong that was my first album, and then I got Steve Martin.
Yeah.
There it is.
Let's Get Small.
Yep, I've got it on my wall.
And
he's also a musician. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a banjo player, right? So
let me ask you this real quick before you get further, because I was a Steve Martin fan as a kid too, and I got maybe 25% of the jokes on the records, but I still loved it and would listen to him constantly. I'd hear my parents laughing about just the Pope shit in the woods, but I had, Grandpa bought a rubber, all that shit went right over my head.
Oh yeah,
listen to it
for sure. I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, I would laugh at the silly things like when he would go, "You guys are going to be on a record," and they're like, "Woo!" He goes, "Well, maybe someday, not mine, of course." And I was like, "That's so funny to me." Here, and by the way, here's a picture of me and Bob when we had lunch.
Oh, wow.
my God.
That's awesome, dude.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's got to be cool.
it is very cool, actually.
Um,
So I got in. So I got the Steve Martin record next, and then my parents had Red Fox Dirty Jokes at home.
Oh, that's
okay.
And I found it and I put it on. I got hit. Don't play that record. It's not for you. That's for adults. And I'm like,
right.
"Oh, okay, damn. I know Red Fox is going to get my ass whooped." And then I got into Carlin, and I got into Carlin heavy. And obviously Eddie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From Iron Maiden. No,
Eddie Money.
Eddie Money. I got into Eddie Money. And then when I got those first 2 tickets, they were generally to Paradise. I got into Eddie Murphy, obviously. It was, you can't avoid not getting into Eddie Murphy if you're from that era. But Carlin became like my everything. Like my dad and I bonded over Carlin because my dad was an English major. So my dad loved the wordplay, and then I loved the wordplay too. And, you know, as a kid who, you know, transitioned in from a lot of rock and heavy rock into hip hop, the wordplay became very important in hip hop. Not anymore. Now fucking mumble play is the game. But
Yeah.
when it mattered, you had to be sharp with the pen.
So, teenager wise, this is about teenager wise, right? Like early teens, mid teens. What music were you listening to in your teens?
In my teens, I was very much a hip hop head.
Yeah.
Like from about 82 till, I mean, it's funny, people know me as a hip hop guy, like mostly as a hip hop, because I'm a historian with hip hop. Like I executive produced a documentary series called Hip Hop Evolution.
That was fantastic, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so people go, "Oh, Russell, hip hop. Let him be. That must be all he listens to." And I'm like, actually, no. I listen to a lot of rock still. I listen to a lot of classic rock now. The older I get, the more I appreciate all the one-hit wonders from the 70s. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you got into hip hop, you were right on the cutting edge. Like when I first listened to it, was like Dougie Fresh and UTFO and the Fat Boys and all those guys. And I know they weren't the forefathers. There were a couple people come before those, but I remember back in those days when a new rap record would come out, it would be fantastic because nothing had been done before. So everything that was coming out almost sounded completely, just completely different from what had come before it. And then, you got the West Coast and the East Coast. Then Public Enemy came around. It's like, wow.
Yeah. How old are you, Jay?
53.
Okay, so I'm 51. So we're the same shit, really.
Yep.
And Raelyn, how old are you?
I identify as a 27-year-old, but
that's fair.
But I'm actually 37.
Oh, really? I actually thought you were younger than that. But I thought you were like 24 or something like that.
No.
It's the filter we got on this camera.
Yeah, I mean, you're far away anyway. But I mean, the good news is Jay looks old as fuck.
Yeah, there you go.
It looks like I'm talking to Robert Plant. That's how old he looks.
That's why he's my guitar player. He makes me look way young.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you and I are from the generation that all the music that is currently has been available to the kids. We were literally from the generation that created all those genres.
Yep.
We're from the generation that created hip hop. We're from the generation that created house music, punk, new wave. Everything was us. Grunge. It was all our generation doing all these crazy things. And I think that's why older guys like ourselves get so mad at the music now, because we're like, you stopped fucking trying. We were trying so hard to do something. And I think country and Western is like the last bastion of people still trying to play instruments and still trying to write songs and still have melodies and stuff like that. Like literally, as I get older, the more I'm looking at country and Western going, it's actually pretty good. I can go to that. I can hang out at that. I can listen to that.
Yeah, but they're hanging on by a thread. It's getting pretty samey in the country world as well, especially popular music. I mean, there's in all these genres, there's still not everybody's putting out garbage, but it's, once it's just like punk and hip hop and all that. Once they figure out how to make serious cash off of it, done.
That's the problem. Money was always the the killer in all of these situations. When it was done for the love of it, it was so great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
And some people that make money still put out good stuff after that. I mean, I loved everything the Beastie Boys put out, actually. That was which was the strangest success story for me out of hip hop, because it was almost a joke band with their first record. And then by the time they get to Paul's Boutique, it's like, Jesus fucking Christ, man.
Yeah, the first record was Cookie Puss, remember?
Oh, yeah.
And it was terrible. And I thought it was a
joke.
joke too. I was like, what is this? Get out of here. And then they released License to Ill, and I go, wait a second, what is that?
Yeah, that's the first time I heard sampled drums, because one of my black friends played it for me in high school. And it started
sampled
off
The Ocean.
Yeah, it starts off with When the Levee Breaks drums, and then Sweet Leaf guitar plays over the top of it on the first track. And I just spun to him like, what the fuck is this? The two songs that I love over the top. My mind was blown just from that.
Remember they sampled The Ocean?
Yeah. Sped it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rick Rubin, Metalhead.
Do you remember when
Yeah,
you would
that was wild. You know, and then like, look, When the Levee Breaks, and I just sat with John Bonham, my new best friend.
There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, Jason Bonham, sorry.
John would be that would have been a trip. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember when you'd send me the old hip hop because I hadn't heard it, and I'd be like, "Oh, that's I've heard that. That's on Ludacris."
I sent her like
and
Lottie Dottie or something. She's like, "No, yeah, Snoop Dogg did that." I'm like, "No. Let's go back."
Yeah,
We're
Snoop
back
Dogg
on.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was
Snoop's actually a big historian as well.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is most of the older hip hop generation, like the founding fathers, like Grandmaster Caz and Melly Mel and all those kinds of guys, who I'm very good friends with, when they come to my house and hang out, all they want to hear is classic rock.
Wow.
They don't want to hear any hip hop. I'll put this on the go. Turn that shit up. Put some fucking rock on.
Yeah.
Literally, it's not even like they're trying to be funny. They're just like, I'll put on some stuff and they're like, oh, good. Thank you. I need a break from that other horse shit.
I always thought it was weird that nobody did a Black Crowes in the hip hop world and just did like, you know, the Black Crowes basically just came out as a brand new Rolling Stones. They kind of dressed like them, did that thing. I had never heard anybody in the hip hop world go back and put out like, you know, a boom bap, like kind of just sparse, ripped out. Like I always was waiting for the Kango hat and the Fat Laces and some group to just come out completely retro. Never happened.
I mean, Jurassic 5 sort of did that to a certain extent.
That's a good point.
To a certain extent, they did that. And they rapped more like the guys in the early 70s, you know?
Right.
With the crew style and the you know, ba-doom, and the you know, that kind of stuff. It was kind of cool. But again, that only appealed to nerds like ourselves who knew about that stuff. The other kids like, what is this shit? Turn that off, you know? How come I can understand him?
Exactly. I just wonder if anybody's going to go back and discover, you know, the original Lottie Dottie with just two mouths, you know, two microphones, two mouths, and like appreciate it like we go back and find a Hank Senior song where it's very primitive, very sparse, but I can dig it. The sound sounds great. I wonder if I don't know. I don't know if that'll ever happen. Hip hop seems to just go straight forward and never turn back.
Well, it's one of those things I always just say, the minute it left New York City is when it took a shit. It was like, uh-oh. It's like if country didn't have Nashville, you know, and it suddenly moved from Nashville to like, you know, Oregon. And you're like, what?
Right.
Yeah.
And Oregon became the new home of hip hop. And you're like, what? It has no place there. It's the same thing with it being in the South to me. It has nothing to do with the South.
Yeah, I can dig that.
So when you're going to listen to music now, what do you put on?
It depends on what mood I'm in.
When you're just by yourself, not with your friends, listening to classic rock, or is it?
Oh, I tend to. I tend to play like a lot of kind of melodramatic kind of stuff. Like I'm mad that I didn't know some of these songs when I was younger. Like, you know, I'm finding these songs from like 1970, 71. There's this. Do you remember an artist named Danny O'Keefe?
Yeah.
Yeah, that song "Good Time Charlie's Got the Blues," like that. I love that song.
Yeah,
it's funny with a lot of the comedians we talk to, they tend towards sadder material. A lot of them, like like super sad songs,
yeah.
It's strange.
You know, Linda Ronstadt, "Long Time," Joni Mitchell, "Blue," Carpenter's "A Song for You." You know, Carly Simon, and that's the way I've always heard it should be. You know, like that kind of stuff.
Are you the type of person who gets obsessed with the song and listens to the same one over and over and over again?
Yes, a part of it like a chorus or like just one bridge or something will stick in my head. And I'm like, ah, and I have to hear it over and over and over until because I know I can't make that noise. And when I try, I'm like, oh my God, it sounds like somebody's stabbing somebody in a wheelchair, So.
All right. So how do you get to comedy? Like doing comedy? What propelled you to step out and try that?
Well, it was 1989 when I started. And I was already a fan of comedy. And I just graduated high school a year before that. I was boxing at the time and I was DJing. And I was like, you know what? Well, first of all, I was boxing just for fun. I was never going to be a professional fighter. I always tell people there's boxers, there's guys like me in the gym, and then there's fighters. There's a big difference between a guy who's not afraid to get in the ring and fight versus a guy who's not afraid to get in the ring and die.
Right.
There's two different types. It's like, you're a guitar player and you're very good at it. I would imagine like you're very good at it. You've been doing it a long time, but it's the difference between a guy who's really good on Guitar Hero versus you.
Right.
It's the same thing, So you go, all right, well, yeah, this is not going to be for me. And then DJing, I still do to this day, but I always loved DJing, but there was also better DJs than I was, especially at that time. And everybody started telling me I should do stand-up. They were just like, you're funny. You should go do stand-up. You should go do stand-up. And then I had no career plans and I had no plan B. So that's why I got 2 kids. But I had no plan B. We sold out those days, guys. So I told my brother that I wanted to do it because what really was the tipping point for me was one of my cousins said to me, you're funny. You should go do stand-up. And nobody in my family ever complimented me or said I'm good at anything. Ever. Like when I was boxing, they were like, you suck. I mean, my cousin like, tuck your chin in like this. I go, who fights like this? I'm like, I'm not fighting like this. Because they can't get your chin. I go, yeah, but you can't throw a punch probably because your shoulder's blocking your move. So, and then everybody would have something to say, oh, you play that shit music when you're DJing. And then, I was breakdancing before. They were like, hey, you suck at that. I've seen better guys. I'm like, so you know what? It was like never, ever paid a compliment by anybody in my family. And when this particular cousin, my cousin Andrew, who's since passed away, but he told me, he was like, you should go do stand-up. I think you'd be really good at it. I was like, really? And people had told me before, like friends had told me and stuff like that, but it never resonated until my cousin told me. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I told my brother, and my brother was like, have you ever seen stand-up live? And I was like, I've seen Eddie Murphy. I saw Eddie Murphy in 1986. I saw George Carlin, but I never actually saw a comedy club. I never went to a comedy club before that. So my brother goes, well, don't you think you want to see it before you go and do it? I go, actually, yeah, that makes sense. So I was 19. I was actually 18 when he took me. He took me to a comedy club to go watch Amateur Night. He took me to some other comedy spots. And I was like, yeah, I want to try it. And then I asked how you start, and I signed up, and here we are 32 years later.
So how long after you signed up, did you have material? Like your first walked up, you just went up and winged it.
Wang it?
I barely winged it. I thought I had material. It was awful. I was fucking awful. Like awful.
So what made you go back for time number 2? You had to get one laugh, right?
I got a giggle. That's all I heard was somebody go, and I was like, oh, wait, hold on. I got somebody I don't know to laugh. Okay, hold on. I'm going to try this again. Tried it again. I got a couple of more laughs. And the funny thing was you get 5 minutes. And I remember first night I did like 3.5. And the second time I did like 2.5. And I got off and they were like, I go, you the light didn't go off yet. You're short. I go, yeah, I don't know. I just got scared. I got scared and I ran off.
Yeah, we love comedy so much. We make up stupid jokes to say in between our songs. But if we bomb, we get to be like, and a 1 and a 2 and a.
Just start playing loud, You got to sit there and just eat it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the fun. What's funny is that I do awful jokes like all day with my friends and family. Like I just spit anything that comes into my brain. And if it doesn't get a laugh, I'm like, Anyway, guys, this next guy you're going to love and plays clubs and colleges all across the country. Please welcome. no matter what I say. Anyway, you're going to love our next comic, guys.
I like that.
So you're doing comedy in Canada, I guess. How did you?
Yeah,
did
in
you
Toronto.
get to the States before you got to other countries, or were you going to Europe or anything before you got to the U.S.?
So I started in Toronto in like 1990. 1990, I went to London to go see a girl. And while I was there, I got on at the Comedy Store in London. I'd only been doing stand-up 1 year at the time. And I was like, yeah, I'm a comic from Canada. And they were like, oh, can I get some time? And
you were exotic at that point, I guess.
Yeah, I had no business saying I was even a comic, to be honest with you.
Stick some balls.
Shit. Yeah, I didn't know. Again, if you're not from the industry, you don't know the industry. Raelyn, you're lucky. I mean, you grew up around it. You saw, the ins and outs, and you know who to talk to, who not to talk to, and what to say and what not to say. I had no clue of any of that. So there I am. I'm like, yeah, I'm a comic from Canada. Can I get some time? I happen to be in town, And I have pictures of that night. I posted it on my Instagram before. But yeah, I mean,
how long did you have to do a set for there?
I think they gave me 10 minutes or something, or 8 minutes or whatever. I did it though. I didn't care.
Yeah. Did it go well?
I can't remember, but I think if it went horribly, I would remember, but it was probably just like whatever, And then I went to New York in 91. Was it 91? Yeah, 90. No, not 91. It was like 92 or 93. I went to New York and I was like, I'm going to go make it in New York. And we didn't end up getting across the border for some reason. And also 1990, I think I also had gone to New York at that time. I went to go see my uncle. I went with some friends to go record shopping. And then while I was there, I stayed at my uncle's place in Long Island. And then I told my uncle I'm doing comedy, and he goes, oh, I'd love to see you. And I was, yeah. So I ended up going into Manhattan and then finding these comedy clubs, and they were bringer shows. And I went and did time on at the New York Comedy Club or stand up. Yeah, it was New York City Comedy. It was a New York Comedy Club, it was called. And it was hosted by this guy named Rumpelmeyer, who was this extremely gay guy.
Rumpelmeyer.
Hi. And I was like, he was so gay that I could never be as heterosexual as he is gay.
A true believer.
Yeah, he's always his Indian name would be Balls Deep.
So if you went to New York in the 90s in the comedy thing, that there were some killers.
Oh yeah, but again, this was 1990, and I'm an open micer. And then I didn't go back to New York until 96. And I used to sleep on Patrice O'Neil's couch back then.
Oh wow, cool. One of my favorites.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it was me, Patrice O'Neil, and Keith Robinson. Keith Robinson and Patrice were roommates in Woodbridge, New Jersey, and I used to sleep on their couch.
How did you hook up with them?
I met Keith. He was in Toronto shooting a movie in 1995, and we became friends. We somehow met, and we became friends. And then he was like, yo, you need to come to New York, man. And I was like, I got nowhere to stay. Go stay with us. And I'm like, okay. And I didn't know Patrice until I went there then. And I was like, wow, this guy's funny and mean. Jesus, was he?
That's what everybody says. It's like, yeah.
No, but he loved if you got upset. That was his thing. He would do it to make you upset. And if you got upset, that was his victory. But when he would be mean to me, I just thought it was an honor. And I would laugh, and he would get so mad that I'm laughing. Fuck you laughing at, stupid? I'm making fun of you. I'm telling you, you're stupid. I'm like, I know. Isn't it great?
So were you going to the Cellar and doing spots when you got there with all those guys?
Yeah. I do the Boston, do the Cellar, stand up New York. Again, I went back to the New York Comedy Club. We would do the comic strip, and then I would get offered all kinds of gigs while I was there, just like open mic gigs. But some gigs paid like $25. One gig paid $75, which I'm like, yo, that's a lot of money.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I went and did this one gig, and I got $25. It was a Saturday night, And I told Keith, I go, yo, this dude Capone offered me a spot at his place in the Bronx at midnight. And I'm like, and I go, it's $75. He goes, his exact words were, nigga, you gonna get kicked in the fucking throat. And I go, what are you talking about? Because I'm black and I won't do those motherfucking rooms. And I go, man, it's $75. So him and Patrice took me down there, and I didn't get on stage till 1:30 in the morning.
Wow.
It's at a place called the Bronx BBQ. It's a restaurant, and there's no stage. You're standing, the booths in the restaurants. I'm standing in the booth on the table, and everybody's around you in the room. And first they put on this one guy, Jimmy Martinez.
Yeah. They
start booing him off. And Jimmy had like a temper and he was like, yo, fuck all y'all. I'll fight any one of you motherfuckers in this room. And shortly after, like a week or so later, he got stabbed from doing the exact same thing at another gig. He got stabbed. And I mean, he's still alive, but he was always that guy. And then after him, they put on this guy named Wild Will, who was like this crazy guy from New York. And if you ask any comic from New York who came up in the 90s, you ever heard of Wild Will? They'll be like, oh my God, how the fuck do you know about Wild Will? Wild Will was this guy, get on stage and he would go, I'm getting inside your head. And that's what he would just do. And he would be like, I'm getting inside your head. And he would do this thing with his hands and make these weird noises. And so they were like, y'all want to see Wild Will? And they're like, yeah. And they brought Wild Will on. He gets booed off. And I'm like, fuck, I'm next. And it's like a really hood room. And I'm not, despite growing up with black people my whole life, I was never the guy that was like, yo, what's up? What's up? What's up? I was like, listen, I know I'm not black. That doesn't mean I still can't be friends. all my friends don't, my friends don't expect me to be black like that. They understand I'm not that, but I understand them. So I get on stage and go, what's up? And they're like, fuck out of here. Get off the stage. I was like, thank you. Good night. And then we get in the car and Keith looks at me. I told you, stupid, kicked in the fucking throat. I held up my $75. I got paid.
That's hilarious. So, yeah, and I've always thought it's a trip about your comedy is one of the things you seem to not get away with, but have a way with being able to do, I guess you call them ethnic jokes, but, making fun of all creeds, races, all that kind of stuff. And I think it's probably a testament to just how good a writer you are, but it seems like you get away with a lot of that shit that other people stuff that people can't say.
Or won't say.
I think it's because I'm racially ambiguous to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know who to hate.
Yeah, they don't know. They're like, wait, he's not white, but he's not black, but he's not, what the fuck is that? You know what I mean? So it takes them all that time to figure out if they can be offended or not. And getting people now like comment on my Instagram, like, you racist piece of shit. And I'm like, what? Shut up.
I'm all of them.
Here. And I'm like, you're a fucking moron. You're such a moron. I'm like, yeah, I'm racist. Yes, that's me. That's what I've been doing my whole life. Just living this big racist dream.
But it's clearly you've grown up around a bunch of different kinds of people because all of those bits are so spot on. I imagine when you go to India, I'm sure you're huge because I don't know a lot about Indian culture, but they make me laugh because it's like listen to a Spanish comedian or speaking in English, but talking about growing up in Mexico. You might not have gone through that, but if they're good, you feel like, you've been there.
They paint the picture for you.
Yeah, but you do Chinese, Japanese, black, white, Indian. It's amazing. And I guess that's just from hanging out probably in New York.
Yeah. Growing up in Toronto.
Oh, yeah. There it is.
Toronto's so multicultural. And so you learn a lot about different cultures because especially in Canada, the immigrant wave is first. It's all first generation you're growing up with. People our age are growing up with first generation immigrants. So the Italians spoke Italian, the Greeks spoke Greek, the Hispanic people spoke Spanish, the Filipinos spoke Filipino, the Chinese people spoke Cantonese, everybody knew their native language and their native culture firsthand. So it's not like America where people are like 4 or 5 generations deep where they have no clue what it was. And they're like, "Oh, I'm Irish." I'm like, "You've been Irish in like 7 generations. When the fuck were you Irish?" I like to drink. I'm like, "No, it takes more than that. It takes more than a bad liver." You know what I mean?
So what was it like to meet a New York Italian coming from so close? It must have been hilarious.
For me, it was, I didn't, again, because I grew up in Toronto, I didn't understand that the Italians didn't speak Italian.
That's what I'm
And
saying.
I was like, "Hey," I go, "What are you going fucking Italian?" "I don't, bro." And I go, "Hey, che cazzo, you know?" And he goes, "I don't speak Italian." I go, what kind of Italian are you? What do you mean you don't speak Italian? I'm like, because I know a lot of words in a lot of different languages. And I like some guy, some Italian guy be with me, and I'd be like, "Hey, look at this fucking faccia da culo over there." And they go, "I don't know what that means. I don't know what it means." I go, "Well, you're fucking Olive Garden. Stop calling yourself Italian."
Okay, so over your career, have you gotten a chance to perform or open for open for a band, open for a musician? Have you had one open for you?
I opened for some reggae artists in the mid '90s because, again, growing up in Toronto, I grew up around a lot of Jamaican people. I grew up with the black dudes, and all the black dudes were Jamaican or Trinidadian, and they were all West Indian. And so I knew the Jamaican culture better than I knew my own culture. So I grew up with that music. And then when somebody said, "Do you want to open for Barris Hammond and Marcia Griffiths and Freddie McGregor?" I was like, "Hell yeah."
Absolutely.
So I did that. The first time I opened for a rap group was in 1993, and it was the Far Side, and they were on fire at that time. They had that song "Passing Me By," and I got booed off.
That's probably a lot like the Rib Joint or whatever in Brooklyn.
No, this was worse because it was my own city.
Oh,
and I was like, no, I grew up. I know what it is, and I know exactly what I did wrong that day. I wore the wrong clothes. I acted the wrong way, and I wasn't prepared. I hadn't, and I think it was so good. I mean, it was like boxing. It was like the first time you get cracked on the jaw, and the bird starts spinning around your head, and you're like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" That's when you determine whether you're going to continue doing something. Mm-hmm. And once I got booed off that first time, I was like, "All right, I don't like that feeling, and I'm not going to let that happen again."
Now, what do you mean you wore the wrong thing? What do you mean by
so
that?
I was wearing these red jeans, which was at the time a good look. And then I had a guy who owned a clothing company. I said, "Yo, can you make me a baseball jersey? And it says Strictly Hip Hop on it." And so it was like, "Yeah, okay." It was actually basically this very similar color combination to this hat. It was like cream colored with red, and so matched the jeans, and it was really cool looking. And at the back it said Peters, And here's what I did wrong. I put on that jersey and I tucked it in my pants.
Oh no. Yeah.
Okay.
Like a nerd. Like a fucking nerd.
So they sniffed that out immediately.
Yeah, they see me walk out. They go, "Who's this? Get out of here! You suck!" And I'm like, "I haven't even said anything yet." But then I felt good because there was a band on right after me before The Far Side came out, and they were like a popular band in Toronto at the time. And the bass player starts playing the Otis Redding lick that Tribe Called Quest sampled. Boom, yep. Boom, boom, and he goes, "Can I kick it?" And the audience goes, "No, you can't."
So they were there for The Far Side. And
oh, yeah, they were there for The Far Side.
Yes.
And I learned a valuable lesson that night. But so musically speaking, Nile Rodgers and I are very good friends.
Oh, wow.
Like we're very, very, very good friends. And
that dude's got a few pelts on the wall, man.
Yeah, he's made a hit or two.
Yeah.
And, so Nile and I do this thing now and then with the band with Chic, because my DJing wasn't just like, it wasn't like I was just playing records. I used to battle, so I cut and scratch and do all that kind of stuff. And so I do this thing with Nile where he plays the guitar lick of Le Freak in front of me, and I'm scratching the beginning, the "ah." And I have a video. This is the video of. The warming up stuff.
Dude, how much fun is that?
And standing there was Melly Mel and Grandmaster Kaz and Eric B.
Yeah, and when you say DJ, I was about to say when you mentioned when you started, your equipment's probably gotten a lot different than it used to be. I hear people call themselves DJs now, and it's a laptop and their iTunes account, you know?
Yeah.
And I remember the crates of records and dudes, you know, like you were doing, it blows my mind. You know, I saw a Mixmaster Mike thing online the other day that he was showing something that's just, it's mind boggling. I think people forgot about that talent.
Oh yeah. I mean, DJing, I mean, again, it's like guys that started out on an acoustic guitar and then Les Paul shows up and makes you an electric guitar and you're like, the hell is this?
Yeah.
You know? And then you transition from the acoustic to electric. And then you got the guy who comes out with the wah-wah pedal and all this other stuff. And then you by the time you're done, your stage is cluttered with all this new equipment that you're using,
Right.
and sound effects and filters and, you know, all those things that you guys get to use. And a lot of guys are purists and only want to do it one way. And for like guys like me, we're purists. However, the laptop is the Serato. That's your DJ. That's all your music.
Right.
So it's easier to show up with a laptop and 2 vinyls. Those are the control records. And I can just plonk those down. Now I got all my music with me and I can still DJ and do all the stuff that I need to do.
Without doing.
But so for convenience, yeah, nobody's going to show up with the crates of records anymore.
Just making trips, walking back and forth in the car with all those records.
Does anybody do that anymore? You think? Nobody?
They do have vinyl nights. And then they have all these new, you know, these hipster guys. You guys are in Austin. You know what that's like.
Oh, we're in Nashville.
We're in Nashville.
You're in Nashville. Oh, well, there you go. Now, at least Nashville's got real people. You know, what's funny is last time I was in Nashville, I went to a bunch of those country bars out there with the live bands because I love it. And I did not realize how much country I knew because I was singing along with every song. And my friends go, "The fuck did you get into country?" I go, "I don't know. Apparently I know a lot of country in my brain. I had no clue."
Yeah.
Were you right down there on Broadway?
Yeah, there was one on the corner, a big one,
Mm-hmm.
some saloon.
It's
Yeah,
been
it
so
might
long
have
since
been
like in the 90s when we were
places down there now.
That place has
and-
changed a bunch. It used to be just, you know, strip joints, Tootsies and
Oh,
rhyming
good.
and falling down.
Blake Shelton's place.
Went to Tootsie's.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So I'm curious as to how you got international, like from the 90s in New York to international fame. How do one get that first, like,
The long story is I started going to London, England in 95. And from London, I would pick up these dates all through Europe. I had got an agent when I was in London. And then he'd be like, "Hey, Russ, do you want to go to Belfast on Tuesday and Londonderry on Wednesday?" And I go, "Yeah, where is that?" He goes, "Ireland." And I'm like, "Awesome. They pay this and here's your flight and here's your hotel." And I'm like, "All right, cool." And I would go to Ireland and then they'd be like, "Hey, there's a pub in Belgium that does comedy on a Thursday." And I'm like, "Okay." There's a gig in Copenhagen. Okay. There's a gig in Sweden. All right. And I would just end up doing all these little shitty one-nighters. They were never great shows. Ireland was always a great show, and especially in Northern Ireland, Belfast and Derry. But again, at the time, I didn't realize that I'm amassing all this knowledge. I'm accumulating all these experiences. And I went to Dubai in like 1999 when there was nothing in Dubai. It was one hotel. There was one hotel, was the Hyatt, and you would perform downstairs at the Hyatt. There was a nightclub called The Vault, and this expat from England booked comedy shows in there, and they would just fly us in, put us up, and we would go do the shows. And then after the shows, it would turn into a nightclub again, and I didn't realize that it was filling up because all these beautiful tall women were showing up, and I was like, "Wow, look at all these chicks!" And they were coming up to me and they're like, "Hi, how are you?" And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, "She must have seen my show," but they were all Russian hookers. I was like, "Oh, okay, my bad." They didn't care about what I did up there. But I went to Hong Kong in 1999 before they gave it back the British gave it back to them.
right?
So I got to see all these different places at early in my career. I went to South Africa in 2001. I went like 3 weeks after 9/11. I went to South Africa.
Wow.
And
Wow.
and again, these are experiences I never thought I was going to have, and it's not registering in my head yet. Still not. Then I did a special in 2003, and I guess having traveled to all these different places, that's the way my writing was starting to go. And that special is the one that blew me up. And people go, "I saw your first special." I said, "You did? The one in 1995?" Like, Oh no, no, not that one. Okay, then 1997, that was the second. No, not that one. I go, oh, the one with the orange background. I go, that was 2003. That was my third. You know, I think people go, I've been there since the beginning. I'm like, no, you weren't there. Nobody was there since the beginning. I was barely there in the beginning.
So I assume the internet helped spread that around. Like, did that special just kind of blow back up from people go back and rediscovering it?
Yeah, so we shot it in 2003. It aired in February of 2004. And then somebody recorded it. And then the file sharing started. People would email you something. They'd be like, hey, man, check out this clip of this funny guy. And it would be like a 3-minute clip, but you'd have to download it. And remember, it would take like half an hour to download this clip. And then it was a grainy quality video. But people were really into it. And then a year later, YouTube started. And somebody dumped the whole special on YouTube. And then that, bam, changed the world for me.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. You didn't get paid a dime for the YouTube drop, but
not a penny.
Yeah.
But it paid off in the end.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Have you done comedy for like royalty kings?
I have, yes.
You mentioned Saudi Arabia, so I wonder if
I did a private one there for somebody in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. How'd that go?
Amazing.
I would imagine.
It was great. And then, I became friends. The King of Jordan and I are good friends.
It's so weird.
It is weird because, again, it's like being friends with like people you never thought you'd be friends with. Like,
yeah.
I'm friends with almost every poster I had on my wall as a kid. I'm friends with every one of these guys now. And like to be friends with like these world leader type of guys. And when you're hanging out with him, he's just such a regular, normal, cool guy. You're like, you forget.
What do you call him?
The guy controls a country. He controls an entire region of the world.
Do you call him by his first name?
Yeah, that's what he wants you to do. No, not even that. You just call him Ab.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm sure not everybody gets to do that, though. Yeah, clearly, he likes you.
Well, yeah, that's what I said. I said to his brother, I go, hey, when I first met him, I go, hey, what do I call your brother? He goes, who, Ab? And I go, well, he goes, you have to wait for him to tell you what to call you. What to call him. I go, I'm just going to call him sir. I think that's fair. He goes, yeah, that's fine. Because he's not one of those your royal highness guys. He's not like, don't do that. He's like, don't do that.
My liege.
Yeah, I was like, so sir. He goes, Ab, call me Ab. And I go, sure. So sir. And he's like, Ab. And I kept calling him when we first met. I was like, sir. He's like, no, Ab, just call me Ab. I don't want to feel weird about this.
So he must be a huge comedy fan, though. Is he a ball buster?
Oh yeah, yeah. He pranked me hard.
Oh yeah.
When I first met him in 2009 or 2009. Yeah, 2009, I think is when I first met him, and he pranked me hard.
We got to hear this.
He got me good. So the first time I meet him, I got invited to the Palace in Jordan. We're in Jordan doing a show, and he couldn't come to the show. So he was a fan, and he was like, I'd love to host you guys for dinner. I was like, sure. So we do the show. We go to the Palace. It's myself, Gabriel Iglesias, Fluffy.
Yep.
And Angelo Sarukas, another comic who's opening for me tonight. And my brother, my sister-in-law, and we're all there. He invites us in. We go into the basement of the Palace, and he has a teppanyaki room with a teppanyaki grill, and he's cooking us dinner.
Oh wow!
And it's amazing. Like we're all like, wow, this is delicious. And he goes, yeah, no, it's a hobby of mine. I go, I even said jokingly, I was like, this king thing doesn't work out for you. You could always open up a restaurant. So, it's getting later and later. And the Queen Rania is there. And she's like, I'm going to go to bed, guys. Good night. And I'm like, oh, good night. And then my brother elbows me, goes, hey, I think we should go. If the Queen's going to bed, it's pretty much a sign that we should leave, right? And I go, but the king's right there. Doesn't look like he's ready to pack it in. He goes, no. Maybe he's just being polite and not, And I go, all right, fuck. I follow my brother's lead. I'm like, all right, let's go. And I'm like, hey, Ab, we got to go. He's like, why? Why do you got to go? Like we got an early flight in the morning. Because what time's your flight? Is like, it's at 10:30. Because that's not early. I go, well, you got to leave the hotel at like 7 and then get to the airport by 7:30, 8 o'clock and go through customs and all that stuff. He goes, why do you have to leave at 7? No, you leave the hotel at 9, you'll be fine. I go, well, no, I mean, we got to go through customs. If we leave at 9, we're not going to get there till like 9:45, 9:30. And he's like, yeah, that's more than enough time. I go, no. What? He goes, I'll call the airport and tell them to. And I'm like, and that's when you go, right. That's the Royal Jordanian Airlines. You're the Royal Jordanian. I'm like, I get it. I forget. You forget these things, right? So I'm like, are you sure? He goes, yeah, I'll have people meet you and fine. So we leave. Gabriel and Angelo stay. And they're hanging out with him. The next morning we get to the airport at like 9:30. As we pull up to the curb, people meet us right on the curb. They walk us right in, straight through, up into this private room. And we're all sitting around like, wow, this is cool, huh? Like we just literally walked right in the airport and we're sitting in this room now. And they come around with like some coffee, tea, this and that. And then some guy walks in the room with a mustache, and he walks in and he goes, oh, Russell Peters. And I'm like, that's me. And he's like, come with me. And I'm like, oh, all right. And I'm thinking, oh shit, I think the king came to say bye to me. That's what I think. And he goes, what is your buzzboard? I go, it's right here. And he snatches it from my hand. I'm like, hey, motherfucker, like, don't do that shit. And then he goes, you have a cell phone? I go, yeah. And he snatches that from my hand. I go, what the fuck? He goes, you have 2 cell phones? I go, no, I did, but I didn't tell him. I was like, no. Where's the other cell phone? Like, I don't have it. And I'm like, I'm going to add to now. And again, because I boxed and I do jujitsu. So in my head, I'm like, I'm going to have to fuck this dude up. He's kind of got an attitude with me, right? Because that's when my brain goes, oh, you want to pop? And I'm like, let's go to sleep. I'm going to put you to sleep and I'm going to walk away.
Right.
So we start walking down these stairs. And as we're walking down the stairs in my head, I'm thinking, I could just choke him out from behind right now. Sitting out, pop, put him right to sleep and keep him moving, right? But I'm like, all right. So we get downstairs. And as we get downstairs, these 3 armed guys with machine guns. As we come down, the pop, machine guns right on me. And I'm like, what the fuck? I go, hey, it's me. And I'm thinking, oh, wow, the king must be here. He's got his security laid out to make sure nobody messes with him. And he came to say bye to me, but he doesn't want to say bye to everybody else. I'm so special. And then this guy takes me down the hallway, and these guys with the guns are following me the whole way. And he takes me in this room, and I go in this room, and he sits down at the desk, and I sit across from him, and he's like, where were you last night? And I go, what? He goes, where were you last night? And I'm like, what do you mean, where was I last night? He goes, none of your business where I was last night. He goes, where were you? I go, I was out. Where? With a friend. What friend? Who's the friend? I go, and there's a picture of the king on the wall, and I go, I was at his place. With who? Him. My king? The king? And I go, yes. How do you know my king? I go, because I'm friends with him. And I go, I have a picture. You want to see? He goes, yeah. I go, give me my phone. So I hold up a picture. I go, here. And he goes, And I look in the room, and there's a camcorder on the table over there with a blanket over it. And I'm like, is this like an interrogation room? And my stupid comedy brain's going, it's a really old camcorder. Like, brain's going, I would have expected a fucking newer camcorder. Anyway. And he's like bugging me. And he's like, what were you doing? How long were you here? Why were you? And I'm like, and I'm looking at the clock now. It's like 10:15. My flight's supposed to leave at 10:30.
Oof.
And I'm like, I'm going to miss my flight. I have a flight to catch in 10. And then it's like ticking. I'm like, I start sweating because I'm like, this shit's getting real, you know? And then I hear in the hallway, hey, don't point that gun at me, fool. And Gabriel Iglesias comes down and he's on the phone. He's like, I go, Gabe, what the fuck is going on? And he goes like this. He goes, here. And he hands me the phone and I go, hello? And it's the king. And he goes, never ever be the first to leave one of my parties again. You just got punked, bitch.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay. Before I let you go, because we're at an hour mark, just when's the first time you remember hearing about my grandpa, Willie Nelson? What's your own personal Willie Nelson story?
I was never ever fortunate enough to ever meet the man. I did a movie in Austin 6 years ago. And the reason I did the movie was because it was a stoner film. And I'm not a stoner, but the reason I agreed to do the movie was because they said they were getting Willie Nelson in the movie.
Oh, you got duped.
Yeah. And I was like, if Willie Nelson's doing the movie, I'm fucking in, buddy. And obviously he didn't do the movie, nor did he do a song for the movie like we were told that was going to happen. But I mean, they'll sell you a dream, buddy.
Yeah.
But I mean, you got to figure I was born in 1970. I mean, I grew up, he was always there. You know, so the same way that these kids grow up and hip hop existed and it was always there, that's how your grandfather was to me. It was just like, he was never this new artist on the scene. He was always there and he was always on my mind.
Slow clap. Well played. Well played.
That's where we should end it, I think.
I think so.
Russell, thank you so much for doing
Yeah,
this
man.
with
Thanks
us.
for
Thank you, Raelyn. Thank
Great.
you, JB. That guy had a great time. I'm sorry we pushed this off for so long, but I'm glad we eventually did it.
Yeah, if you're ever in Nashville, let us know, man.
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
We'll hook up.
Somebody brought up Nashville last night and I was like, I want to go. I miss Nashville.
Well, come down and let us know. We'll hook you up.
Yeah.
And when are you guys on the road again?
On the road.
On the road again.
Oh, sorry.
So we just have a one-off in Sacramento in
When?
September 18. It's in
No.
Farm to
not
Fork
gonna work.
Festival. And then, yeah, just a couple other little things
Well, fine.
around
That's
Southeast. Not, you know. What was that?
Except that's how you're
Well,
gonna-
fine, if that's how you want to be.
Well, you know, with COVID, it's hard to get out and play, and for it to make sense, it costs a lot of money to get a band on the road. You know how to.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's true.
So
Maybe we should
It's
just
just
take. We should just get Russell to DJ for all our percussion. You and I'll play guitar. You play ukulele, and then we do a trio.
Yeah, we could do that. I could keep a little 4/4 for you.
Yeah, less shit to carry around.
let's go play a show for the King of Jordan.
Yeah, can you hook that up, Russell?
You love it.
We'll open for you next time.
Beautiful. I'm in.
Thanks, man. Thanks for
Thank
doing
you so
this.
much.
Have a
Yeah.
good show
Thank
tonight.
you, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Russell Peters is my favorite comedian.
That was one of my favorite episodes. Not only did he ask me how old I was, we talked about old school hip hop and rock and roll and all that. Anyway,
You suck.
subscribe. Please subscribe. We're so close.
We're so close to 1,000. Subscribe. Hit that little button. Subscribe.
Gotta get paid. Anyway, enjoy your groceries. I know your mama's name.
Don't be an asshole.
We have freed Brittany.
I don't really know if we should have, though, because things are really weird.